Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today we will be discussing various risk terminologies which a risk practitioner encounters in his day-to-day life. So these are the common terminologies which everyone should know. So these are the basics or core in the risk management. So we will go one by one with regard to these concepts. So we will discuss what is threat, what is asset, what is risk, what is vulnerability, what is exposure. So these things, if you take into account, take into the context of the organization. Okay. So how is this relevant to the organization? So asset is for an organization. Assets are computers. Okay, systems, computers, servers. Okay, people. Okay, or it can be process. So basically anything which adds value to the organization, which helps to add the value. Okay, helps to add value is an asset for organization. So these can be people, processes, systems. Okay, it can be also intangible or tangible. Okay, so if you remember, if you know, patents or proprietary information. Okay, patents or okay, okay, or trade secrets, they are also an asset because they help to compete in the market, produce products for the company. Okay, okay, they distinguish the one organization from other. Okay, so this is all about the asset. Okay, so we will move on to the threat part. Okay, so what is threat? I will give you one example which will help you to understand threat. Okay, exposure and risk. Okay, and vulnerability also. So suppose if you are driving a car on the highway. Okay, and if you are going through mountainous area. Okay, and it has a curvy roads. Okay, so there is a threat that okay, that accident may happen. Okay, your car may go off the cliff. So so this is the example of threat. Okay, and any unwanted outcome for the organization or asset. Okay, in this case, okay, the car may go off the cliff. It's a threat. Okay, okay, so it can happen due to any factor. Okay, so that is a threat. Okay, so threat is basically undesirable outcome. Okay, so threat is an unwanted outcome for organization and asset, or the threat can also originate from inside or outside the organization, and also it can also be a weapon. Okay, so one country possessing nuclear weapon. Okay, so it is a threat for another country because it can be used against it. So this is all about the threat. Mind that you remember the car example which we were discussing. We will discuss. We'll for this example we will use to discuss the other concepts. So next we will move on to the vulnerability part. Okay. So what is vulnerability? So vulnerability is the basically weakness in the asset. Okay. Uh, Weakness in the asset basically asset, you remember this as computers. Okay, systems, computer in the context of cyber security, or flaw in the software. So this is basically vulnerability. So suppose if you publish any software. Okay, software or web application consider, and there is no input validation, proper input validation. Okay, so it is a vulnerability. Okay, so what if there is no input validation, proper input validation? So the web application is prone to SQL injection attacks. Okay, so this if the attack happens, yeah, so it is a risk basically. Okay, so there is exposure also. that it is some attacker may come and do the SQL injection attack. So there is a exposure which along with if you consider it with threat, it will materialize into the risk. So vulnerability is basically the risk, weakness in the asset, okay, and the risk in the weakness in the asset, okay, needs to be mitigated. So vulnerability is a flaw, loophole, oversight, error, or limitation or frailty, okay. So next we will move on to remember the car example which we discussed, okay. So suppose your car has your tire pressure is low, the car tire pressure is low, okay. So it is a vulnerability basically. So while driving through the mountainous area, puncture will happen, and your car will roll down onto the cliff. Okay, so it's a vulnerability. Okay, and there is threat also, so which can materialize, and there is a risk of car falling down off the cliff due to the low tire pressure. And okay, so next we will move on to the exposure part. So suppose if any system has a weakness, okay, has a vulnerability, but if it's not online or it's not published, okay, system has vulnerability but it is not online, okay, the system is not online, so the exposure is nil basically, because public access is not there, so exposure is not there. So once if you have a vulnerable system and if you make it online, okay, so it is exposed, it is exposure, okay. So some pen testers will come and attack the site, okay. Attackers will try to exploit the vulnerability, okay. So this is all about the exposure, okay, possibility of exploiting the vulnerability. So this is all about the exposure. Risk. Next, we will move on to the risk part. Basically, risk is the culmination of the previous concepts which we discussed. So risk is nothing but possibility that threat could exploit vulnerability. Okay, threat could exploit vulnerability to cause harm to the asset or organization. Okay. So this is the basically risk. Risk is equal to threat, which we discussed earlier. Threat times exposure. Suppose if you take the system on offline, any vulnerable system or your servers which has many vulnerabilities into it, so there is no exposure if you take it offline. Okay, so your risk immediately becomes zero. But if you make it online and attackers are trying, okay, to break the system, so exposure is there and your risk is imminent. Okay, so there is certain risk, certain not imminent. There is sure risk that it will get hacked. So this was all about this concepts, 5 concepts which we discussed, which are basic risk terminology concepts. If you happen to like the video, please do share, subscribe the channel. Thank you. If you have any comments, please do leave it in the comment box. I will be happy to answer them. Thank you.